Hi, welcome to valuationmediation.com and preparing for divorce mediation. So, my name is Melissa Gregg, and I am a financial mediator and business valuation expert in St. Louis, Missouri. So, a lot of my discussion and really my work centers around mediation consulting. And mediation consulting is really working with people to understand how they get prepared for divorce mediation specifically. Now, it could be other versions of mediation, but for this particular discussion, we're going to talk specifically about divorce mediation. And one of the things that people kind of get a little apprehensive about is that they start to have a situation that they're either in a legal process, they have attorneys, they have experts, and they could be that the other side is offering mediation. We will also talk about the fact that this is a great strategy if you're currently in litigation and you're having a hard time getting everybody to move or do something different. And so, in those types of situations, you are actually offering up to go to mediation. And what does that entail? Because a lot of times, the first piece of it is how are we going to determine who the mediator is? And this is going to be an important piece of this because in a lot of situations, the mediator that you're hiring typically knows your lawyers. And what that means is that they have been, the mediator was a former attorney, a former judge, and they're being called on to come into this mediation, but they might already know the other players. They might know the experts, they might know the other lawyers. And so in those situations, you're really then trying to figure out how are you going to choose the right mediator? A lot of times in the conversations that we're talking with clients and such, there really is no way to pick the right mediator. The mediator is going to have a certain process or procedure that they go about dealing with these divorce situations. And again, if they're a former judge or attorney, they're going to basically be taking the divorce court into mediation. Mediation doesn't have a lot of rules around it. So you have mediators that are kind of trying to create their own way of getting people settled. And the biggest thing is that for the most part in the litigation system, you don't always have control about going to trial. You don't have control over the other side if they delay or they distract you and kind of get everybody taking way more time than necessary. A couple of the things that are going to happen is you're going to need more money. And if you don't have access to money, that's going to be a significant problem. Now, why are they doing this? In order to get you to negotiate under duress. And what that means is that you don't have all the money to pay the right people to get you prepared for mediation. You also may not have enough money to pay the people that are currently involved in your case to take you to mediation. Mediation is going to be like 4 to 8 hours. And typically the mediator is going to charge each side. So they're going to charge the husband, they're going to charge the wife, or vice versa. If you have, each spouse is going to be charged. So, what should you expect when going into mediation? One of the things that you should expect is that you need to prepare, and prepare means prepare weeks in advance. So, if today you're asking for an appointment with a mediator, you're probably going to get about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, that is how long it's going to take to get into that mediator schedule. And so, if the mediator gets you into the schedule a lot sooner, are you prepared to go into mediation? And what does that entail? So, the typical thing that you're going to first do is talk to your attorney or your expert and say, what should we do to prepare for the mediation? If they come up and they say nothing, or they say, we're just going to wing it and we're going to figure it out when we get there, that's not a strategy. That's really a reaction. And they may not be putting a lot of time and effort into prepping you for mediation for a couple reasons. They may not know how to prepare you for mediation. They may not have done mediation and been successful in it. They may really think that it's like we give it a shot, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. That's not a strategy. A strategy that we employ is really going about and preparing a little bit more in advance. And so how long in advance do you need to prepare? Typically, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks or longer. It depends on if you have attempted to discuss or quantify all of the financial issues. So the first place that we start is with a statement of property. And the statement of property is going to list all of the things that you have. So all of the property, all of the debts. That is going to be the basis of a settlement agreement. That's typically the basis of what you are filing initially into the court system. And so your attorney may have already come up with that scenario or that spreadsheet. So the first thing that I would ask them is, do we have that spreadsheet up to date? Do we have your list of assets and debts up to date? So you might want to update it, which means getting new statements or most recent statements that you can download, and then updating that settlement position. The next is, where are the issues that you have kind of, you're already going to fight about? So is there a separate asset? Is there a business valuation? Is there a house that needs to be sold or both people want it? Is there marital waste? So is there money that's being spent on the outside of the marriage, right? So typically when you're making money in the marriage, you're going to need to spend that money on something that's family related. So if you're going out and buying things that are just for you, or you're using them on a girlfriend or a boyfriend, then those are going to be some issues. So have you quantified that? Have you put all of those pieces together in a spreadsheet? Have you put them on one page that's a good summary of the marital waste? Those are the things that we could be working on in order to get to a settlement offer. So what are some of the things that you need to do before divorce mediation? You're going to need to prepare your settlement or get at least close enough to a settlement offer. So that means getting a preliminary business valuation, working with somebody that will give you a preliminary idea of what the real estate is worth, getting an idea of what the marital waste is. It 20,000? Is it 100,000? Is it 600,000? Starting to quantify those numbers takes time. And so if you start to prepare them before the mediation, then ideally you're going to provide an offer to the other side within like 1 to 7 days before you go into mediation. That offer should be a product of what you've been working on in order to prepare for the mediation. And it could be a one-page summary that shows like, here are 3 major issues. We have a business valuation, we have a house situation, we have a retirement asset, and we have this property that everybody thinks is separate. And then we have marital waste or abuse issues. So again, a lot of times people think that they can't go into mediation if they have these very volatile issues. And I would say mediation is your opportunity to gain a little bit of more control over the negotiations. Why? Because the odds are the other side is not going to prepare. And if they don't prepare, then you're coming in with a preparation, you're coming in with an offer. And when you go to mediation, the mediator will come to you and say, well, where are you on settlement? And you can say, I've provided an offer 7 days ago, 5 days ago, yesterday, whatever it is. And they need to respond to that offer. Now, why do we recommend maybe 7 days? And this is where your attorney or your team comes into play, because again, this is a strategy. And so the strategy would be somewhere between 1 and 7 days before you go into mediation that you're providing a settlement offer. And the settlement offer is going to be, what do you want? What do you expect to gain at the end of this? If this were a perfect mediation and you got everything that you wanted or needed, what would be the reasonable offer? That means that you need to go through all of the different issues. And so a lot of times what attorneys are going to say is, well, let's just wait to deal with that until later. Let's just, I don't know if you're really going to get that asset. That might be a little bit of a push. A lot of times the team that you surround yourself with is going to tell you that things are not going to work out for you, and they're going to encourage you to settle. When you go into the mediation, though, you're really trying to position what your offer is, and you're trying to give them enough time to digest the offer. You're giving them enough time to even maybe respond to the offer before they go into mediation. And then when you get to mediation, there are going to be like the sticking points, the areas that you can't agree to and that you really need to talk about. Those are the areas that are going to be ripe for mediation. And those are the areas that you really want to be prepared to put your position forward. So that means getting some preliminary documents. And quite frankly, a lot of times people can't get a preliminary valuation. And so reach out to somebody or us to get a preview of what the valuation could be if you go to trial. Now, what happens if you fail? Like mediation fails if you walk away and you don't have a settlement at the end of the day. This is why we recommend maybe 4 hours of mediation as opposed to 8 hours of mediation. Maybe you chunk it up into 2 4-hour segments and then you have a plan or a process. But mediation typically never fails. And it never fails because you should be using the mediation to put forth an offer, to see what their response to that offer is. And you're listening for that in the mediator's words. So the mediator is going to say, I really think your position on this one area is not so good. And you're going to be like, why? Why is it not so good? Why are you asking those questions? You're asking the mediator those questions because they are just listening to what the other side says. And they're coming back to you and saying and regurgitating that information. And so mediation isn't going to fail because you're either going to go in and you want documents. You're going to go expose the fact that they are doing delay tactics and distraction tactics. You're almost even bringing that toxic spouse, because yes, we can do mediation with toxic spouses. You're bringing that spouse in there into mediation. And so you have an audience with which to talk about some of these complex issues. You hope that the mediator has some way of convincing your spouse to do something that is reasonable. It's not that you're asking them to come all the way to the other side. It's that you're trying to get everybody to come to the middle and to agree on something that's going to be best for the family. So if you don't position that up, if you don't provide a settlement offer for that, then you're waiting for the other side to do the work. The odds are they're not going to prepare. They're not going to get even the documents necessary to go into that. So how do we succeed in mediation? Succeeding in mediation ideally means you're walking away at the end of the day with a settlement outline. And the settlement outline is going to be like a rough idea of what you agree to, those big ticket items, right? Are we going to sell or keep the house? Who's going to keep it? Are we going to sell or keep the business? Who's going to keep it? What about the retirement? Are we splitting the retirement evenly? If not, how are we splitting it? Are we looking at it before tax or after tax? All of those things go into play in the offer that you're providing. And so if you're making an offer, you could offer that 7 days in advance or some sort of portion in advance. Now, when you come into the mediator is going to have rules around what you need to deliver to them before the mediation. A lot of times, regardless of whether the mediator has like documents that they want to see before the mediation, some mediators just start and come in cold. Both ways are fine. In all of those situations, because you can't control the mediator, you have to understand that you're giving the mediator information that you want to go to the other side. So that's going to be factual information or maybe things that they should know about the situation. Typically, we're putting that together on a 1-page summary for the mediator that you're going to give to them, and they're going to use as their roadmap of your case from your perspective. And so this could be like your top 3 issues. Okay, our issues are the kids, the house, and the business. And ancillarily, you should also know that, my spouse has moved this money, $150,000 from this account, and we don't know where it went. My spouse is traveling all the time. And so we really need a kid situation that's going to work for us and be flexible. We have this business that is basically all of the money is coming from the business, and they're going to get to keep the business and all of that cash flow. And I'm not going to be able to make as much money. So I need this to look fair, right? And fair is really the F word in divorce in general. And so you want something that is reasonable, that makes sense. You're not splitting things down the middle. You're creating two buckets and you're trying to make them somewhat even. And so if somebody has dwindled marital funds, if they have, taken money and it's gone, you want to expose that happened, but you want to be very factual, because again, they're taking that information and they're going to go to the other side, and they could also tell them about these things on the other side. Again, that is what you're utilizing the mediator for. Is the mediator is your direct communication to the other side. And so if you start to fill the mediator's head with, well, like, this is what I want, and as long as I get this, I'll be perfectly happy, and this is my bottom line, you're literally feeding that information to the other side. So the mediator is not necessarily your friend, but they're also there to get you settled. So utilize them to convince the other side to settle, because you've already came in with an offer that is reasonable. So again, what can you do to prepare for divorce mediation? Start to work on that the one-page summary or outline that's going to direct your entire team through this process. What are your 3 biggest issues? What are the 3 pieces of information that they should really know, either about each of those issues or a couple facts that they should know about these issues? You don't want to inundate them with information. You want to give them a very clear picture and have them really go towards the issues that are of utmost importance. Because again, if you're divorcing a toxic spouse, they could absolutely want to go to mediation because they want to get over on you. They want to, see you in person. They want to be able to negotiate with you, and they believe that they can prevail. Allow that to happen. Allow that to happen, and that for them to not be prepared, and you are prepared. And in those situations, then you now have a one-page that's summarizing for everyone. Because the one thing that you need to remember is that your attorney and the mediator and your expert have lots of other clients. They're not going to remember the most important things that are important to you. You also need to understand that you don't need to tell anybody your bottom line. You need to hold off on that. You need to figure out what leverage you have going into this mediation. And the leverage is usually trying to gain documents, gain information, or expose the bad behavior. And so when you're prepping for mediation, you need to mentally prepare for the fact that you're not going to just be telling them everything. You're going to be keeping them focused. They only have 4 to 8 hours in order to go through this process. So they need to learn, what are the facts for the situation? What are the major issues? What are your solutions? Well, your solution is your settlement offer. Your solution is that big, spreadsheet. Your solution is now you might have provided that settlement offer to the other side, but you may not have given them the underlying data. You didn't give them the prelim valuation. You didn't give them the prelim appraisal of the house or the other property. You can bring that to the mediation. If they took money and moved it, bring the one page that shows the movement of money. Bring some of these documents. You should probably be going in with about 10 or 20 single pieces of information that will show them what happened, not that you're telling them. Because again, if they take a picture of the statement that says $100,000 was moved from this account to this account, and we don't know where it is, they can take that statement to the other side and say, hey, tell me where this money went. You need to reconcile that money was spent on the marriage, or else we could have marital waste. Now, marital waste, if you're dealing with it in a mediation, is going to be a conversation. It's going to be one of the levers in the negotiation that could be removed very easily. So if you have $100,000 of dissipation in the marriage, they might be like, well, would you be okay with just accepting $50,000, and you get some other some other asset. So again, though that's kind of too far in the weeds, but this gives you a preliminary understanding of how to get prepared for divorce mediation and how to not treat it as if it is just another day that we're going to go figure out things. If you have a plan and you put together something that really has a doable process. So you're offering them a full settlement offer going into the mediation. You have the backup in the mediation to prove out how you got your numbers. You have information that shows them how assets were moved or squandered. And you put all of that together. You're going into the mediation absolutely prepared, and they are probably going in absolutely unprepared. So this typically works at the first mediation. And if you can get in there and be prepared, they make decisions. Like a toxic spouse sometimes makes decisions very rashly, right? They make it very quickly. And if you set it all up so that everybody is there and they're going towards your offer and they're going towards the way that you've determined that the things could be split because you've talked to a financial professional, you've talked to like a mediation strategist, you have a strategy going in. You can be prepared, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your team has to be prepared. You could guide yourself and your team through this entire process. You just have to take some of these steps to create some of these documents so that you are prepared for divorce mediation. And the preparedness is that you are going there with a settlement offer and negotiating that settlement offer. If you leave it in the hands of the other side or the mediator, they're not as fully invested. They don't understand some of the nuances of your situation. And if these nuances are getting lost on your team, you're going to put it in that one-page summary that you're providing to the mediator, typically the day before or whatever the mediator requests. You're going to provide that information. That's how you set yourself up to succeed in mediation. And even if you don't succeed, you're going to have a perspective from what everybody feels about your offer. You're going to have a perspective about the kind of the risks that you have in your valuations or your position. And you can take those and then kind of massage your position and update your settlement offer so that you have a better position going into trial. So mediation is never going to be a fail if you realize that you're going to learn information in there. And if they're not giving you documents, at least go to mediation and try to get the documents. Establish that you will come back to mediation after these documents have been provided. And that timeline will now force everybody to kind of go within that timeline, to provide the documents within 2 weeks, to then go to the next mediation 2 weeks after that. Then you have a better likelihood of success at the second mediation, but you got to go through the first mediation prepared so that you know where you need to make some changes in order to be really prepared for the second one. And that's where you would probably see that you would get settled. And even if you get settled that day, you may still have to, the attorneys may still have to leave, or somebody's going to need to write up the entire agreement, which is going to take into account all of the little pieces. So just because you don't come to an entire agreement by the end of that mediation, as long as you have the big picture and an outline of what the settlement offer and the settlement agreement is, you then will leave and take a couple weeks for everybody to put together that full offer or the full agreement. And that's what you're going to be providing to the court to get basically a review of the court, and then you would be divorced. So it's still a process. You can't assume that that one date is going to make or break the entire situation. But if you prepare enough in advance and you prepare the right pieces, you can certainly prevail in at least the first or the second mediation. Or you're patient enough to understand that it's a process and you work through that process in stages, and it's still going to give you probably a better outcome than waiting for some arbitrary date in the future with a judge and then waiting for them to give you a judgment. So if you have more questions, we have a full training program to help you get trained for divorce mediation. We also have something called the Divorce Allies. And the Divorce Allies is our group of professionals that will help you get prepared for mediation and your own settlement offer. It's a monthly membership and it's very reasonably priced. And if you'd like more information about that, reach out to me or send me a message and I'll give you a link to join us for free. And you can join our circle meetings. We meet once a week. We walk you through all this process and we have a lot of tools and templates to help you get prepared. You really have to be empowering yourself to take control of this process. If you are with, individuals that are not listening to you, or you just don't think that everything is working in your way. You might have to take a little bit more action in this process and get prepared so that you don't fail in the mediation. And don't look towards your attorney or expert to make sure that you're prepared. Sometimes they have not been through this and they don't know about the strategy to go into divorce mediation. Seek out strategists or people that are financial mediators and could help you understand your financial picture. Again, my name is Melissa Gregg. This is valuationmediation.com. You can also reach us at thedivorceallies.com and message me for any additional information.